Hey everyone, welcome back to the YOUniverse podcast. I'm your host Shanley, and today we're featuring Chris Kellum. Chris is my boyfriend. We just celebrated our 7-year anniversary.
We're domestic partners at this point.
My partner in crime.
So we're technically married.
Yes. So today, I thought it would be fun, an ode to all of the years that we've been together, to do a little podcast. So I put a poll on Instagram for those of you that don't follow me. That's where I tend to just put out feelers to see what people really want to hear and see on the podcast. So we got a wide range of questions, but the most common one is why we chose to be sober. So I thought, why not start there? And we'll just kind of see where things go. I got a list of questions here that we'll try to work through, but of course, we just let the vibes vibe.
Yeah, I'm in, baby.
All right, babe. So with that, tell everybody a little bit about you, Chris Kellum. Put in your plugs.
Ooh. Well, my name is Chris Kellum. My pronouns are I'm handsome. So I started social media back in 2018 as a way to get over my fears of speaking on camera. And it was one of my biggest fears at the time, but it was something that I knew I wanted to do. So I started putting myself out there. It was perfect timing because Shanley and I both became flight attendants. So we experienced being flight attendants for 2 years, which was super easy content. So just day in the life as flight attendants, sharing our experience traveling, the struggles, documenting doing a fitness show. And then once we left JetBlue, I went more into the military side. So I've been in the Army National Guard for 13 and a half years. This is my last year. Super thankful for the opportunities and the experiences. And yeah, so I kind of pivoted and did fitness stuff and kind of documented how to train for the Army Combat Fitness Test. So I do online coaching, launching an ACFT fitness app, and then I also do marketing for a crypto venture capital. But yeah, so it's a little bit about me.
Yeah. Chris likes to work.
Can't stop, baby.
When he comes home from his 9 to 5, he's still working on some kind of project. And
7 to 5. Don't be downplaying it like that.
Well,
it's a 7 to 5 job, which is horrible. Because I get an hour of PT, hour lunch, but still it's in St. Augustine, so it's a long commute. It's like a 12-hour day for a 40-hour work week, which is crazy.
Well, before we dive into sobriety, you mentioned something that I think the audience would really be interested in. When you first started your YouTube channel, you were so nervous, and if we can find the clip, I'll insert it for you. But his first one, he's doing like a selfie video, and he's super nervous. You can tell he's holding his breath and just super uncomfortable. And there's something to be said about that. When you're doing something new and you're really bad at it, just having that anxiety to put yourself out there. And I know that I've gone on that journey a little bit too, which is why it took me so long to launch the podcast. So tell them what we kind of did a little bit to get you past that, so that you could just be in the space now where you are just constantly online.
Yeah, so that's so crazy to think back. That was 7 years ago, but I remember sitting in my apartment living room, and I don't know if you were there or you weren't there, but it didn't matter. If no one was there, I was still super nervous. Once I hit that record button, the anxiety and my heart would start racing, and I would kind of freeze up and think oh, maybe someone could hear me through the walls, and it was crazy. But I knew it was something that I wanted to do, and I knew it was a fear that I wanted to get over, and that kind of ties into wanting to do public speaking down the road. But one thing that we did was you would kind of sit there and kind of guide me through when I would record and test out recording. And I don't know, it kind of gave me the comfort to record in front of people. So over the years and going through as a flight attendant, I would record the trips and do it with the crew just to kind of break that ice. And it was a fun time. But yeah, your role in it was kind of guiding me through getting over being nervous, just hitting the record button. And that clip was horrible, but hey, here we are now. We're doing it as much as we can, and I'm planning to go full force into content creation and social media here, with me leaving my full-time job as marketing director for the National Guard and going into a startup with a venture capital within crypto, which is super exciting. So if you guys are interested in blockchain technology or venture capitals or learning, we have 150 investors, and it's a super exciting time, especially with Trump in office. It's like the most pro crypto administration, regardless of your politics. We got a lot of clarity coming and excitement.
A little bit of a tangent there.
I know.
You could
That's
tell
just
that
me,
there's
though.
a lot of passion. I think the point that I really wanted to focus on, because this has been, I think, a constant in our relationship and our role to one another. When you were trying to get more comfortable with recording, it's weird to talk to a camera because there's no emotional reaction or response to what you're saying. So you don't really have a feeler for how people are receiving you because there's nobody there, which is a big part of communication in a face-to-face setting. So a lot of times what we would do is I would hold the camera and look over, and so that he could look at me and pretend like he had somebody there. So just a good little exercise for those of you that might be afraid to step into your potential, whether that is online or in person. I think the more you practice and the more you invite people in on that journey, the more comfortable you get, which is a big part of what we're here to do. This is our universe. We're expanding on that, and we're growing into our potential. So with that, let's dive into today's topic, sobriety. This June 2025 will be 4 years since we committed to sobriety, and that feels...
Where does the time go?
So crazy. So some of the questions that we got online. First being, what inspired each of you to stop drinking, and how did you come to that decision as a couple?
You want to go first?
Let me take the reins on this because I think I kind of initiated it.
Yeah, you sent me the Dr. Amen podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for Dr. Amen, he's really big on brain health, and I think he's committed lifelong with everything that you could possibly do to kind of promote brain health. But just from the little bit that I gathered, I felt like that was a really good next step for me. I never really felt like I was crazy about alcohol, didn't really need it to be social. So it felt like that good first step of something that I could achieve to kind of build my confidence on the list of things that I wanted to achieve. So I thought, wouldn't that be easier to do with someone else? And then that's when I kind of came to you, and then I'll let you just kind of step in on that, and then I'll kind of complete it later. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, my reason for quitting was much different than hers. I would use it as a crutch. I didn't realize it until I met her, but I would need it to go out and socialize. And it kind of makes sense too if you think back to when I said I would get nervous in an empty room hitting record to talk to a camera that there was no one behind it. So 1, I would use it as a social crutch. 2, I wasn't my best self. I wasn't my best version. I wasn't proud of who I was when I would drink. It's not like every time I drank I was a complete idiot, but I would turn into Chris Campquani, basically. If my friends are watching this, they know who that is. But I just wasn't proud. I hated having the anxiety the next day, and being on social media. I want to be a good role model too. So not only did I watch the Dr. Amen podcast, but I've seen TED Talks and stuff, and not only just talking about quitting alcohol, but not watching porn. So right around the same time, I stopped watching porn and drinking. And honestly, it's been the best thing that I've ever done for myself, because like I said, I want to be a good role model. And if I'm putting myself out there on social media, and if I'm doing online coaching, I want to be the best version of myself, because if I'm not the best version of myself, then I'm not putting my best foot forward, 1, for my partner, but also for the clients that I'm coaching. And ultimately, it comes down to wanting to be the best partner for Shanley and our dogs and maybe our future family. I wasn't proud of who I was when I drank. So, yeah.
So give them a little insight as to what Camp Kawani is, because I think that'll really paint the picture for why you made the leap.
Yeah, so back in high school, I got the nickname Chris Campquani. because when I would drink, I would turn into like this alter person, or they have this alter ego. And we went to Camp Kwani, and it's like this lake in the small town that I grew up in. But there was a wedding going on, and everything was good. Like, we went over, we were hanging out with like the bride and the groom, and they were having a fire. And I don't know what happened, but like it got to I must have said something because it was going great. And then all of a sudden my friends like rolled up in their car and like skid out and like, get in the car. So we all ran, but I guess, Chris Camp Kwani. I basically said that I owned Camp Kwani and that my name was Chris Camp Kwani and that they needed to leave. So I don't know why. Like, this was back in high school. We're talking, what is that? 14 years ago, 14, 15, 16 years ago. But yeah, like stuff like that would add up, and you would drink too much. You weren't drunk until you were drunk, and that was kind of me. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm feeling good, like I'll do another shot, and then it got to the point where I was really drunk and I didn't know what happened that night. So then the next day you have like that anxiety, and not only that, it's just like you're poisoning yourself every day. So listening to the Dr. Amen podcast really kind of brought it full circle. And if I want to be the best version of myself and I want to continue to be healthy, I don't want to put poison in my body. And I'm not perfect. I like ice cream, I like sweets, but if I can control the things like alcohol and not put that in my body, I'm perfectly happy with that.
Or the frequency of what you're indulging in. And I think back to how you would behave when you would drink. I think,
is this like an AA meeting? Do I get a chip after this? Like, what is going on?
No. Well, no, I that's a big part of my why too. I mean, although I didn't have that personal experience, I've seen what that's done to people that I care for. I won't name names, but my roommate at the time was like a sister to me, and she really struggled with substance for years. And when we moved away, we moved from Florida to Massachusetts when we were flight attendants. It got worse and worse for her. And at the time, I was going on my own mental health journey. And so it just got to a point where her experiences were overwhelming me in a time where I needed a lot of support. And it kind of led to the fall of our connection. And when you love somebody that has an addiction, you understand. I hate to call it a sickness, but that's essentially what it is, because they're not the same person anymore. And you love that old version, but when they're consumed by, I'm going to call like liquid evil, they're not them. And so it kind of forces you to make those hard decisions. So I saw that in somebody that I truly cared for, and then how it affected you. I mean, you're such an even-keeled person that alter ego was just odd, and I think it was the root of a lot of our arguments at the time. We fought way more when we drank.
Yeah, I don't even think we fight anymore, to be honest. Might have like a little like bicker, but like we would fight. we also, hey, hold on. I'm not an alcoholic either, so let's just clear that up. It was just when we went out, I would have a good time. I didn't have to drink every day, like.
Well, I think.
But I mean, it was kind of normalized in college to drink every day of the week almost.
Well, there's something to be said about how it affects different personalities in people. Like, I'm a very type A, like to be a controlled person. So I think the tally of many times that I've blacked out is maybe once. And that was when I was in a very, safe environment with people that I knew would care for me. But if you're a go with the flow, easygoing person and you enjoy having a good time, like it affects you differently. So it's not that you had a problem, but it's just, you don't know the limit.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you are in the moment,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I did have a problem. I couldn't control myself.
Well, most people can't when they're intoxicated. Yeah. But...
And that's why I'm so glad I don't drink anymore.
Well, and I think that's the positive, right? So when we committed to that together, it showed us the flaws that we had before that we really couldn't figure out. We didn't know why we were bickering and arguing, like full-blown arguing.
Yeah, I wouldn't remember what we argued about the next day. I'm like... Pfft.
And I would, and then that would be frustrating because, like, I'd be like,
yeah, like, you idiot.
daggers in my heart, and he'd be like, Emma now.
I didn't do that.
He's like,
that never happened.
You liar. You're making that up. I'm like, oh, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, like, we didn't, like, that's crazy. Yeah, we didn't start perfect either. Like, you know, everybody has those textbook, you know, exciting relationships where you start off and it's just like a honeymoon phase. Like, we didn't have that.
Well, you had a lot of baggage.
A lot of baggage.
that I didn't know about until I was in it.
Yeah, true.
But, you know, I think I never really believed in love at first sight. And to this day, I can't necessarily say that it's that simple. But when I met you, I had this like all-knowing feeling that you would be someone special to me. I didn't know what that would look like, whether it be friendship, maybe you would just help me grow, or you would be my partner. I didn't know. But I felt a connection with you that I've never immediately felt with anybody, both in physical attraction, but intellectually.
Handsome.
Oh, God. It's the worst.
It was all the flexing in the mirror.
Which he does do.
Not anymore, because I'm a retired vet. Got the vet body.
Vet bod.
Disabled veteran body, yeah.
It's more like,
yeah.
babe. Not so much. Ew.
Yeah.
But
no,
yeah.
I felt the same way. Even though I had baggage coming into this relationship, usually, like, you know, if I knew things weren't going to work out, or like I would just cut things off with girls. But I knew there was something special about Shanley, and like I said, that's one of the main reasons also why I quit drinking, is because, like I said, I want to be the best version for her and potentially our future family if we ever decide to do that. And that's a topic that I'm sure you guys are super interested in to learn about. But like, we're not like, we got to have kids, but I'm kind of on the line where I'm like, if it happens, it happens. But you're like, man, I don't really want kids.
Yeah.
But I've accepted that. And that's something that we didn't really have as well as communication. So at the start of the relationship, it was bad. But something that you do need is communication. And we've communicated about all this stuff. And I think that's important to do instead of having surprises and you get married and they're like, oh, well, I didn't want kids, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think too, for the first part of our relationship, at the first like 2.5, 3 years, we lived with his parents and we had no foundation of our own. And then living in his hometown, there was a lot of variables that worked more in your favor than mine. And I kind of had to pave my way through that. Now, flip side, and we'll talk about this in another episode, I'm grateful that we had that opportunity. I feel like it's bonded me with your family on a deeper level than maybe I ever would have had. But I think by the time we fled the nest and we finally had a space of our own, we were so fed up with fighting that we wanted a change. And I think that kind of pushed us into the commitment and the willingness to be on the same page about the substance, because we noticed, well, I say substance, but alcohol.
Substance.
Oh, dun, dun, dun.
What substance?
But it pushed us to where, like, when I suggested it, you're like, you know what? Fuck it. Like,
well, yeah, because we had a conversation like, the only time we argue is when we're drinking. Like, maybe that's the problem.
well, we would argue, but it was like nasty when we would drink. Yeah. And I didn't like being that way to you, or,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
You just kind of get to a point where you're over it and you're like, well, I got nothing else to lose, so let's just try anything.
Full send. But yeah, thanks, Mom. Thanks, Joe. That's my stepdad. You guys hooked us up. You guys let us stay there rent-free. Mom bought groceries, allowed me to pay off all my debt. So thank you guys.
Yeah.
If you're watching.
I love you guys, for real.
Love you.
Sometimes I miss those days. They were just so much simpler. And a lot of times, you know, we traveled so much that we weren't always traveling together either. So if we weren't doing it for work, you were doing it for the military. And I was alone with your parents more often than not, and your friends.
Yeah. You hung out with my friends more than me.
I did.
Love you guys too.
A funny story about how I met his friends. This is a sidebar, not about sobriety. But Russell, Lizzie, they are good friends of Chris from high school. And when we moved there, they had bought their first house. he was traveling. I think you were away for like a month with the military. It was in the summer. You were doing drill. Yeah. Oof.
XCTC, Camp Shelby, hottest time of the year.
It was
Miserable.
the worst. And he's like a magnet for bugs. But, you know, they were doing a housewarming party. And I was like, you know, fuck it. Like, I'm going to meet these people anyways. I might as well meet them now. So I went and had a great time. Everybody's really welcoming. And there was a veggie tray. I was going ham on the carrots and the broccoli. And then out of nowhere, my stomach is like flipping. And TMI, guys, I didn't know if it was going to come out my ass or if it was going to come out my mouth. Like, I just knew it was like an emergency and I aborted the mission. So I ran into their bathroom. I was laying over the floor. Let's just say I tore it up in there in all the ways that you can.
Oh my God.
And I think I was in there for like an hour. And mind you, this is the first time I'm meeting these people.
And she went by herself, so that was brave.
Nobody to defend me.
Yeah.
And his friend Russell, bless his heart, he knocks on the door and he comes to check on me. Not only does he get me everything that I need, but he brings me like a toothbrush and he's comforting me. And his now wife was like, girl, you good? You know, they took care of me. And it was just a testament of the people that you have in your life and how loving and welcoming they were and didn't pass judgment on me despite how my first impression might have been. So yeah, I got deep really quick, guys. I guess that's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I've been blessed to have the friends that I have. So if you guys are watching this, love you guys. I feel like I've been very close to almost all my friends since childhood. We all keep in touch and even have friends here that live like around the corner. But I know, like, you know, things change. And I think one of the most difficult things about growing up is your friends go off, they have kids, and then you don't really see them anymore. So then you kind of feel lost. Like, we're at that phase in our life where 32, you're 30, and all of our friends have kids, but we don't have kids. We got 2 beautiful dogs, but that's about it. So it makes meeting people more difficult, you know, especially in this phase of life.
Yeah, and to that point, though, I this is not about sobriety, but on the topic of where we're at in our life, I think there's this notion that if you are a parent, that you can't hang out with your friends that don't have kids. I feel the opposite. Like, I want to see your kids. I want to love on your kids. I want to embrace them and spoil them. And, you know, it's a part of the 2 people that were in our lives before the kids existed. And it's so surreal to see a little bit of both of our friends in a single child.
Yeah.
And see how they are with their kids. Like, I almost feel like a proud parent in like a weird way. So for what it's worth, you know, those that might be listening that have kids, don't shy away from your friends that don't have them, because we want to be a part of those memories with you. We want to embrace your kids. We want to be a part of raising them and their memories, their core memories. So, but it is a weird space to be in because, like, we're not married, but we're also not having kids, but we're also trying to be entrepreneurs.
We're goal driven.
Not to say that
David
if you have
Goggins,
a family,
baby, go
you're
hard.
not, but, you know, it's just, you know, the alignment's not there.
Yeah, we've communicated like, hey, like, this is what we want to do. We understand that XYZ would slow the process down to get to where we want. Not saying that you can't do it with a kid, but we've kind of talked about that it would be another financial burden. I don't want to call the children a burden, but financially it would be a stressor, and it might deter us or detract us from going all in on stuff that we want to do and pursue. Goals.
Yeah. Guys, I can barely take care of myself, let alone a child full time.
Yeah, it'd be a lot. It'd be a lot. Our
I'm
2 dogs are our children. We feed them the best food. They get chicken, quinoa, carrots, and greens, and they get haircuts all the time.
They
and
bougie.
they're like little children.
They're spoiled.
Yeah.
Okay, but as far as sobriety goes, let's get back on track. You know, I think this is a great question. What was the moment or experience that solidified your decision to remain sober? I
I
think
think I just felt more. I think it just took doing the reps of going out with friends and experiencing not drinking with friends to feel confident in myself, because when I did that, I would go out and they would get drinks, but I wouldn't get drinks. And at first it was like, "Hey, you sure you want to drink? You don't want to drink?" And then over time it was like they respected it and they stopped asking you. But the thing is, when you go out and your friends are drinking, they're going to feel loose and more confident. And then in return, like, you don't need to drink yourself because they're already doing the work to like loosen up and feel more confident and talking. And so it kind of made me feel more comfortable with going out and hanging out with friends that were drinking.
yeah,
Because then I
because
didn't need it as a crutch because I still felt just as good and I didn't have a hangover the next day or anxiety.
well, I think for me, just so much time had passed, and it just felt like one of those things where why restart the clock now? Um, again, I was never much of a big drinker, but the one thing I did indulge in was always, dinner out with my girlfriends and having a margarita or two. But even that, uh, I guess this is also a part of my why when we traveled so much. The altitude change all the time, organically has your hands and your feet swell or other elements of your body. But for me, it was specifically my hands and my feet. And they would swell so much that I couldn't get like jewelry off. Um, and I noticed different foods had an influence, high sodium foods. And then those margaritas, the sour mix, big part of that, the salt. So, and then I think that also affects how you take alcohol too. Like I would have one or two drinks and then I would feel hungover for like a week. And it wasn't worth the pain at that point. Like I didn't enjoy it enough to suffer so long after. So I guess seeing how good I felt on a regular basis was enough motivation to not, you know, fall into the temptation of when I do maybe crave an occasional margarita.
Yeah. And I think just realizing like how you feel the day of a hangover is just enough for me to not want to continue to drink. And I don't have any urges ever.
Same
Um,
at this point.
yeah. And I have a different vice now,
Oh boy.
Mitra. They're a kava kratom business, but I absolutely love these. I didn't find these until like 8 months ago. But the reason I do love these is one, because I have a lot of pain in my body. So my neck and my low back, herniated disc degeneration, all that, nerve damage.
He's broken.
But this taps into the opioid receptors in your body and it removes the pain receptors. Not saying it's gonna cure anything, but I love them because when I drink them, I don't feel pain. I feel relaxed. I feel chill. And it's also like another type of social drink. So like if you were looking for something else, like maybe you could try one of these drinks. Maybe not. But I did it without it, and you did it without it. It wasn't a make or break, but it was just something to add in to add to be a little more social, to feel good, and if you got pain in your body, check them out.
And you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think one of the questions were there any challenges in the beginning, such as social pressure, adjusting to life without alcohol? If so, how did you overcome them and how did that impact your relationships with other people?
No, I honestly didn't really feel any social pressure. Like people would ask if I wanted to drink. I think I went to a few bachelor parties and didn't drink during this time as well. And everybody was good. Like I have really good friends and they understood that, like, hey, like this is serious and I'm not drinking anymore. So, no.
Yeah, I think it was more so a lot of confusion. I think our society normalizes drinking so much now that if you're not doing it, there's an assumption that something has to be wrong
Hmm.
to correct it when it's just a health choice. Um, so for me, it was answering a lot of questions as to like why or how do you function in high social environments like concert, you know, Do you have a go-to that you drink to kind of feel like you're fitting in? And I think it boils down to being comfortable with not being flowing with the crowd. And very much am. I'm very good at saying no and being okay with that. So when it came to those environments, the liquid death is always sold at concerts. So I'd always have one of those. That's water, if you guys don't know. Um, and then, yeah, I just think it allows you to tap into like your inner child too. I think back to the early 90s for those listening. Um, you're outside all the time. You're being creative. Your imagination is constantly working, and you're not really caring what anybody else is thinking about you. You're just living your life, and you're wondering what tomorrow's going to look like because you're not in charge. Your parents kind of call the shots for your day. And I think in some ways it kind of forces you to embellish on that creative mindset and being okay with the fact that you're in this environment where you're not out of control, but you can still let go of control in some capacity and just enjoy the beat of the music. And at the end of the day, everybody else around you, like you said, is drunk anyways. So you could be as silly as you want. Nobody will remember
Yeah.
except you.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, and it also got to the point where we were tired when we drank. It
Oh
didn't bring
gosh.
energy or life to me to drink and go out. And I think also like quitting drinking also deters you and pulls you away from going out to places that you might not even want to be, like bars at night where they might be smoky, loud, and just like a bunch of obnoxious people. Like part of quitting drinking also was because I wanted to focus more time on my goals and, developing content. And I knew that if I would go out and drink the next day, I'd be hungover and I'd make excuses. So drinking also was a way for me and a crutch to make excuses, just to be lazy on the weekends and be like, no, this is my downtime. I'm resting, relaxing. And it just basically pulled me away from situations that one could have got me in trouble, or two situations that I really didn't even want to be in anymore. So
And I think there's something to be said about age filtering into that. When you're young, you're not really thinking about how you could be maximizing your time for your future self. You're just trying to be more in the moment and have fun while you're young.
I could have been buying Bitcoin in 2011. I missed the boat. Said I was too focused on drinking.
I could have had a condo on the beach. So
Yeah.
shoulda, woulda, coulda. But, I think you had a little more fun than I did. I think
Yeah, I don't regret anything. I had a blast, had an amazing time. It is what it is. But
yeah.
hey, the fact that I'm able to reflect back and realize like, hey, I could have been a little more productive, but luckily no one got hurt, nothing bad happened. I had a good time. I got that phase out of my life, but now this phase is self development and personal growth and relationship growth and financial growth.
Just more mature.
Handsome, mature.
He's going to call himself handsome like more times. So podcast is over.
No, I'm not doing.
It's true. Okay. I feel like we kind of answered some of these, but
That's okay.
so what changes have you noticed in our relationship dynamic since becoming sober? I think we kind of touched a little bit on that. Communication is tenfold.
Yeah, I mean, we could also touch on how like I started doing therapy, and that was a huge part of the communication development between us. I used to be super closed off, and expressing my emotions was something tough for me. I still think it is somewhat tough for me to express my emotions, and I don't cry, and I wish I could cry. I just don't know how to, like I haven't got to that point. And yeah, just going through therapy and working through my own mental health battles, and working with my therapist to work on my communication to be a better partner was probably one of the most beneficial things that I did for us, but also for myself.
I think everybody, at least at some age, should go to therapy, if not temporarily, revisit it over the course of your milestones in your life. I did therapy before you, and you guys know this. I did EMDR therapy, and that I would say that was extremely hard to do alongside a partner because it is like opening Pandora's box, and you have like this dual reality where you're experiencing suppressed traumas while also experiencing emotions in real life, and sometimes you don't know the difference between the two. So for me, and you not going on your mental health therapy at the time while also having alcohol in the mix was very hard, I think, because you couldn't relate yet. You hadn't gone on that spiritual journey. I did my best to communicate kind of where it was at. Hey, this is what my sessions were. I even invited you to sessions just so that you could try to understand a little bit as to the behavior that I might have been exuding at the time. But that's hard. And I think that as a couple, if you can make it through those individual journeys and then find a union journey, you're set up to go the distance to some capacity. And we did do that too. We did some couples therapy. Our first therapist was a nightmare. I actually think he was a narcissist. He was through the VA. If you're a veteran listening to this, you know what that's like.
Not the best healthcare, but you get free healthcare.
Yeah.
Hopefully you get community care.
Sometimes you get lucky, but in our case, in this situation, it was not great. And then we tried a female. The first one was a male. We tried a female the second time. The male had chosen your side. The female had chosen my side. And we both agreed that no therapist should be choosing a side. That's the opposite of what we're here to do.
So we fired them.
We did because they were making our relationship worse. Like we went in seeking help, and then we would leave feeling like we needed to break up. Like
feeling like, yeah, I knew she was wrong, or yeah, I knew he was wrong.
Yeah, and we weren't. I don't know. I think there's something to be said about how we both knew we wanted to be with each other, but we weren't having the right means of help at the time.
Yeah.
So we pumped the brakes on that. I had finished my mental health journey. We paused that couples therapy. You decided to visit yours. And then that got us to a point where we could start seeing your personal therapist. Mm-hmm. Honestly, the idea of that had me exhausted because I really thought, okay, well, you already have this relationship with your therapist. There's no way he'll be able to have a neutral ear. But I was so wrong. Like, he was the best.
Yeah, he's awesome. I still see him every week, sometimes bi-weekly, but yeah, he's awesome.
No, he was really good. So I think with couples therapy, it's really easy to get lost in the details of things that led up to the current day event, and therefore what you're trying to resolve in the current day gets lost in translation. And we were doing that time and time again.
Yeah. Well, you did this. No, well, you did that. It was always like a one-up game.
And then you didn't really know what we were trying to resolve anymore.
Yeah, what were we talking about again?
So David I'm going to say David is our therapist. We won't give his last name.
Mine.
Was our therapist because he's just yours now. Yeah. But he was so good at reeling us back in and highlighting what our points actually were. He was good at filtering out the noise and being like, okay, well, that's not really what you guys are actually saying. This is what I'm hearing. And then we were like, oh yeah.
Yeah, he allowed us. He got us to be more intentional too with each other. And we're not perfect either. Like, we're supposed to be doing dinners every Wednesday. We don't really do that. But like when we get off track, we kind of remind each other that, hey, we need to start having dinners again, So
in a lot of ways,
we're going to have dinner this week.
I would say sobriety has helped us just be more mindful of what works to get us on track so that when we're off track, we can get back on. It's also helped with like our finances too. We started doing a calendar. We took, I think, the month of December off, but it's a joint calendar. It shows all of our financial obligations so that we can have that transparency and we can be comfortable having those conversations as we take on obligations mutually. I mean, we're not married, so these are things that we want to have worked out before we do have that joint financial position. And I think had we not gone through the mental health journeys individually and collectively, given up alcohol, we would have never gotten to a point where we would be intentionally talking about finances because we would still be trying to figure out how to communicate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of, if not most relationships, they just go right into it, kind of during the honeymoon phase. And through their marriage is when they start to work through these things. But I feel like, I'm not saying we did it right or they did.
So we had a little bit of technical difficulties there. The audio cut off, but I think you left off saying that not that we did it right or other couples did it wrong. Does that help?
Yeah. So basically what I was saying was we didn't start off perfect. We worked through the communication later in our relationship. And I think that's kind of a blessing, something that you should do before you get married. And I'm not saying that we're doing it right or other people are doing it wrong. But from our experience, what I think is that this should be a key thing that you work on as a couple before you get married is working on communicating, having those hard conversations, talking about finances, talking about where you want to be in 5 or 10 years from now, talking about if you want to have kids or you don't want to have kids. And I think a lot of people get caught up in the honeymoon phase and they just get married and then through marriage they find out, oh, my partner doesn't want to have kids, or we can't communicate well, and they don't want to seek therapy or seek ways to help communicate better. So not saying we did it right, not saying other people did it wrong. I'm just saying that I'm glad that we're working through this before we hit that next phase of our relationship.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about kind of a backward start. We didn't have to stick it out, and because we did it that way, I think that when we do step into that next chapter, whether it be marriage or kids, if that's on the table for us, I think it'll just be easier. We can enjoy it a little bit more and have less hard conversations in front of potential kids, you know?
Yeah, and if I think back to previous relationships, I never had that good communication aspect or that respect to communicate things. And I didn't realize that was something you needed until dating you and realizing how overly communicative you were. And
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I prefer it, honestly.
Yeah, I don't leave you wondering.
Yeah, there's no room for guessing. Takes the room away from guessing.
Yeah, so if you're looking for somebody mysterious, I'm not your
Yeah.
everything's on the table.
Yep. Absolutely.
I feel like when you were sharing that, I had something in mind that kind of slipped my head, but if it comes to me, I'll bring it up. I think the biggest lesson that sobriety has taught me, us, in this journey, we've talked about a variety of things, how we started, how we've kind of grown to be intentional. There was a mutual desire or commitment to make things better. But also keeping our issues within one another. So I think the hardest lesson that we both learned is sharing the things that we were struggling with in our relationship with other people. Because other people's opinions kind of taint what you know to be true within one another. And now let me just put the disclaimer. I'm not talking about like if you were in like a domestic violence situation, if you were in a thing where you needed true support, that's not what we're referring to here. I'm saying just the normal day-to-day bickering, the maybe misalignment on your morals and your values as a couple because you haven't discussed them. When you invite other people into that and their opinions, you don't truly have each other's back. So then it pins you against each other when you are having those disagreements, and then you feel like it's you versus me as opposed to we're on each other's team. So I think the most valuable thing that I've taken away from the sobriety journey is just when things go haywire, keeping it to myself or my therapist, because it's supposed to be an unbiased opinion there, and coming to you and just
Yeah,
finding,
working through it together versus working through it with your parent or your friends
And making
who
sure
might pass judgment and then have a perception of your partner.
and making sure it's the right time for your partner to receive the feedback that you have or the complaint that you might have, and also how you deliver that. We're not perfect on that yet, but I think we're night and day to where we used to be.
Oh, yeah.
So that if I do bring something up, it's squashed within that moment. It doesn't turn into this stonewalling for days.
Yeah, we don't bottle it up.
Yeah. We used to like not talk for days, which
Nope.
is so unhealthy. And
Yeah. Crazy.
like, I can't believe it's wild how far we've come. And I'm
Yeah.
pretty proud of that.
Me too.
And I do think it's all because of the sobriety journey.
Yeah, I definitely think that plays a huge role in our communication and just overall being better partners to each other.
Yeah. So I feel like we've got a few more questions. How do we celebrate milestones like anniversaries or achievements now that alcohol isn't a part of our lifestyle?
Yeah, and I think if you think about society in general, celebration is usually surrounded by, oh, let's go get some drinks. Let's pop a bottle. I think we kind of figured out what we enjoy, and that's kind of taking some space and going out in nature. You know, I love cold plunging. I love saunas. I love you love working out. We both love working out. So, or getting coffee. So, a celebration for us is getting good food, or going to enjoy some coffee, or hanging out at the beach.
Or turning off devices.
Turn off devices and just kind of spending quality time together, you know?
Being fully present. I think,
which I'm not the best at.
No, and I think we're both still actively working on that. Like I love that we're talking about this, because I think when you listen to a wellness podcast, you hear all the highlight reels and you think that they've got it all figured out, and then it makes you feel bad. But at the end of the day, this is an intentional practice. We do this daily. We choose to be happy in the ways that we know we can be. And on the hard days, we take a mental note and we just pivot and we try to be better the next day. Like, it's never going to be this flashy, everything's perfect, sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, life
ordeal.
Ebbs and flows. You know, there's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times. But understanding that your partner is always going to be there for you and learning to work through those issues is going to be better than, and you know, we're kind of inundated with social media. There's these dating apps, and I think this kind of generation is like so used to just being like, well, you know, if they're not going to change, then I'll just go find someone else. Whereas we took a different approach and we're like, well, you know, we love each other. We want to be together. You know, let's learn to work through this together. And I think that's not just what relationships are about, but that's also what life is about. You know, it's never going to be perfect. There's going to be issues, but learn to work through them.
And there's the flip perspective of that, where you think, well, I'm so rooted in who I am, I'm not going to change for anybody. And yeah. I think, I hate to use this word because it seems so strong, but I think that is a very narcissistic mentality, because the whole part of relationship is bending to find a middle ground.
And I used to be like that, to be honest.
You did, and it was hard.
Yeah.
I was like, God, you made me want to bang my head against the wall.
She's trying to change me. But in reality, I wasn't my best version. And I'm nowhere near my best version, but I'm using life and every day as a way to continue to be my best version for you and for myself. So.
And I think the willingness that got you there was building trust. If you don't trust your partner to have your intentions with or without your presence there, it's probably not a good fit for you. But in our case, I think we had to go through some hard shit for you to realize that the things that I was telling you were coming from a place of looking out for you. It wasn't trying to rob you of your dreams or control you like maybe you might have experienced in
You talking about Jersey?
Yeah.
That was a big shift.
That was pivotal for us.
That was.
We should talk about that.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
I'll give the backdrop and then you can kind of pivot off that. But during COVID, we moved around a lot. We moved from Boston, Massachusetts to Fredericksburg, Virginia. In Boston, we were staying with his parents. And that's kind of when this offer came into our path. Chris went to this wellness retreat. I'm not going to give names or anything, but he met this influencer. This influencer was like, hey, how would you feel about doing content for me full time? And at the time, this was like Chris's dream. He had been working so hard on YouTube, aspiring to be a full-time entrepreneur. And when this came about, it was like bells and whistles to him.
Everything's aligning.
Like, finally, all my hard work's paying off.
This is what I've been dreaming of.
Yeah. And so, he came home from that retreat, told me about it, how he wanted to do it. And I was like, well, fuck yeah. Like, this is everything you've been working for. Let's go check it out. And we did. We flew out to New Jersey, New York, to tour the facility of where this person tends to do a lot of their content. And when we were there, it was everything we could dream of and more. It was like the perfect gym. And, Chris was being toured personally by this entrepreneur. And meanwhile, I was just kind of giving myself a tour. I was mingling with the people that worked there. They were showing me around and got me hooked up with like this recovery zone for my legs. And as I got to talking to this kid, he is telling me why he's there, how long he's been there. I think he was about 4 years at that time. He was approaching 4 years. And I was like, so what's the end goal? And he was like, well, basically he told me he wanted to be everything that Chris was there to be interviewed for and would be about to be doing for this entrepreneur. And I was like, okay, well, here's this guy that's developed loyalty. And a lot of what he shared with me is like his partner at the time didn't support his why. I guess he took a pay cut to come be in this environment in hopes that it would all pay off. And the girlfriend at the time was like, no, you're wasting your time. You're getting scammed. And he was admiring Chris and I was like, interesting. I was like, so your goal is to be a full-time content creator for this entrepreneur? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, so why are you guys here? I'm like, well, that's exactly why we're here. Chris is going to be stepping into that exact role. And you should have seen his face. He was totally butthurt, which rightfully so.
Yeah.
And then, so that's red flag number one. And I'm taking notes. I'm observing people and their behavior and the way they talk to everybody. Then fast forward, we're in the room with the entrepreneur. He's kind of given the spiel of what Chris would be doing, what we would be uprooting our lives for. We would have to move there. Expenses were not included. But what he would be compensated for would cover our ability to live there. And so having the conversation that I just had with that guy, my question to him was, why Chris? And this dude could not answer. He was doing exactly what car salesmen do, dancing around, giving me all this fluff, trying to distract me from what I was actually asking and the answer that I needed. So I asked him 2 more times and he did the same thing all 3 times. And of course, I'm crying because I'm excited for Chris. Like, I'm overwhelmed with it was a euphoric day. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it was a phenomenal opportunity. The gym was nice. The city was great. The vibes were good. Like, if you ever been to New York or New Jersey, like, it's contagious. Like, everybody's motivated. Everybody's trying to do something. Yeah. Everybody's hustling. Yeah. It was a great day. It was like too good to be. It was one of those, oh, this is too good to be true moments.
It really was. Yeah. But it also felt like, gosh, you're finally getting what you worked so hard for. And when we got back to the hotel that night, I, was trying to be very excited for Chris. I didn't want him to ever misinterpret what I was going to share with him. And I was like, but there are 2 things that happened today that I think we need to be cautious of. And before we commit to this, you need to have everything in writing. And there needs to be a contract. Well, then COVID hit. Literally that week when we got back from New York, that's when everything started to lock down. We had to prematurely leave living with your parents because we overextended our stay a little bit.
Yeah.
I think 3 years was a little long.
It's good. I paid off all my debt, though.
Yeah. So we moved in with my brother in Virginia, Fredericksburg. there are a lot of crazy things happen. Chris got rhabdo. He was hospitalized for like 12 days. That was in the middle of the riots downtown DC. We had like night curfews. It was just all kinds of craziness happening at once, all while trying to prep to move to New Jersey for this job opportunity. And this entrepreneur had every reason under the sun, every excuse under the sun not to have a contract.
Too expensive, or my lawyers are working on it. I'm okay. And I trusted him because the nonprofit or the wellness retreat that I went through, they brought him out there, and I believe they're really good friends. But I was like, okay, well, I could trust him. He's coming to support veterans or people in the military. Like, he probably has my best interest. So I just kind of was like, no, this is going to be okay. We're going to be fine. He'll compensate us. And luckily, at the time, like, JetBlue gave us a paid leave for COVID. So we were getting paid from COVID. I just got my bonus from the military. So I was like, okay, I can cover the expenses for XYZ amount of time. But, once we get there, I should be getting paid.
And I'm a big believer that anybody that is looking to take advantage of you is observing who your support system is and looking for opportunities to get them away so that they can sell you on a vision and take that for granted. And like I think that's your superpower, but it's also the slight weakness of yours. You're just so optimistic and you really truly believe in people's intentions until they give you a reason not to. I think that's your superpower, because I'm a little more cautious, but together we balance out. So I bring that up because we were disagreeing about whether or not to go. That entrepreneur flew him out personally without me, and I felt like he sold them on this beautiful, extravagant lifestyle that he could be having without me there to be in his ear. And he came back and he was like, I'm going. And I was like, well, this affects me too. This is my financial well-being. There's too many unknowns. There's not enough security. We're taking a huge risk to go live in this place that we can't afford without this opportunity. And we fought over that for a couple weeks.
We did. Rightfully so.
I really thought we were going to break up. I thought you were going to go and I was going to stay, because I was just like, I couldn't believe that you were going to just do it with or without me.
Yeah, because he offered for me to live with him for the summer.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, okay, well, if my opinion doesn't matter, why the heck am I going to stay with this guy?
Yeah.
I was like, what the heck? But, at the end of the day, I wanted to be a part of it with you. And I felt like we had so much more room to grow that I would regret not at least trying everything. So we go out there, and I think you learned a very hard lesson.
I did.
That person did not deliver on anything that they said that they would.
Yeah, it was almost controlling. So I was pitched this dream opportunity to come out, help create content for this creator. He was going to teach me how to create content. He was going to connect me with all these people and, help me grow my page. And it was nothing like that. I was constantly waiting for a text or a call to come meet him, to record. And then if there were opportunities to meet people, I would try to speak to those people. And there was I just remember this one point where he pulled me to the side and he's like, hey, you're not supposed to talk to these people. He's like, you're supposed to be a fly on the wall. And when the opportunity presents itself and the time's right, I'll introduce you to these people. And I was like, whoa. I was like, this is not what I flew out here to do. So I kind of got a little down on myself about that, because I was like, damn it, Shanley was right. And so through that process, we would communicate. I would tell her how the day was and stuff that would happen.
And mind you, I didn't see him at all. He was with this guy who wouldn't respect your time. He'd be like, be here at this time. And it would be crack of dawn. He'd get there early and end up waiting 2 hours for this dude to show up. He was just...
He didn't show up once either.
He would disregard... Yeah, he would just ghost, no communication, no respect for anybody else's time. And then when you would finally connect, he'd be condescending to you and like belittle you in front of other people, like you were less than him in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
It was mentally abusing.
It was definitely a time of growth and learning. And what I've learned from that is to always have a contract going into anything. So no matter what brand I work with or partners I work with, we always make sure that there's a contract. So that was the biggest lesson I learned from that. But I also learned that I could trust Shanley to give me advice and have my best interest when those things come up again. So,
and then I'm never going to rob you of an opportunity, because I've been in relationships like that too, and it's not. I think that's what connects us, is that we
push each other to be better, and we don't say no if there's an opportunity that presents it to one of us. We're like, okay, well, let's figure out how we can do this together.
How do we make it work?
Yeah.
So all that story, long-winded story, is just to really paint the picture of the start of when we could begin trusting one another, and then the journey that led us to keeping our problems between the two of us, because they got resolved a lot faster doing it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was a lot easier to do that without alcohol in the picture.
Yeah, nope, absolutely.
We would say hateful things, especially in Jersey.
Good times. I learned a lot, but I think leaving that position and then, being fired and not being paid for the work that I did really, really showed me like how I could trust you. And so now, like, I always go to her if I have like questions or if I need advice or mentorships. Literally, I go to you. I call her my guardian angel because she saved me from a lot of things. So,
and I think you've taught me to be a little more trusting and to not be so critical or judgy, to have a little more of an open mind with things. And you reel me back in that way, because my life story has taught me to be a little bit hard, and that's my protective mechanism. And I think in a lot of ways, your openness and your good energy makes me a little bit lighter, to where I can be more receptive to things I would normally just reject off the bat.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've noticed it too, like your progress over the years to being more optimistic and more open and less judgy.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
But, that's a cool thing that maybe you could speak to this too, but when you remove expectations from your life, you find yourself in more positions to feel fulfilled by little things. And I think I've actually lost a lot of like friendships with girls because they project this expectation for what they think is the right thing in a friend, instead of truly just accepting me for the friend that I am, or communicating what they need. Because a lot of times we could have that conversation, and then I could say, hey, like, that's not something that I feel capable of delivering, and I love you, but maybe this is just not gonna work, at least in this phase of our life. Girls and guys are a little different in that way, but I find that I'm a little disappointing because I don't require as much.
Yeah, girls are crazy. They have to have like a breakup.
Don't call girls crazy.
Sorry. They're not crazy, but it's just wild that girls like have to like announce that like, hey, our friendship's over. Whereas like guys, it's just like, I kind of just look at it as a season where,
like, you press pause.
Yeah, we just press pause. Like, I understand you're busy, I'm busy, and then maybe at one point later in the future we'll come back together and we'll reunite. But girls are like, yeah, this is not working. This is over. Like, it's like a breakup every time you lose a friend.
And I think that's where I relate to men more, because I don't feel the need to have those conversations. I'd rather it just fiddle.
Yeah.
And then, phase its way back in over time. But more time than not, like, I have to have those weird conversations, and it's like, okay, well, I'm sorry I'm disappointing you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
I never understood it, but
no. So yeah, just I think surrendering projected expectations makes you find a little more fulfillment in just the little things in life.
Yeah, just
and less
understanding.
disappointed.
Yeah, understanding control what you can control, and it's easier said than done. But if you might feel overwhelmed, that's some things. Just be like, well, can I control this, or can I not control this? And if you can control it, then try to fix it or try to find a resolution. But if you can't control it, just let it go and try to let it play out.
Yeah. We talked about a lot.
Yeah, what else we got?
Mm,
What else we gonna wrap it up?
I think we're getting close to wrapping it up. Let's see.
You can have a fun time editing this one.
Oof.
You got to get a better editing software.
I know.
Because iMovie sucks.
Well, I don't edit on iMovie.
CapCut sucks too.
Whatever. Let's see. I guess, what advice would you give couples or individuals considering sobriety, especially those who might face resistance or judgment from others?
I think the big thing is just going in together, doing something together, because it's another way to, one, bond with each other, but also hold each other accountable. So yeah, I mean, I just kind of make an agreement. And if your partner doesn't want to go in to sobriety or becoming sober, just make sure that they respect your decision to not drink alcohol and, not put you in situations that might cause you to break or want to have a sip of alcohol.
Yeah, I'm thinking just with like anything in life, you have to take other people's thoughts and opinions and throw them out the door. Mm-hmm. And be comfortable with decisions that benefit you. So, I think a lot of, whether it be sobriety or, tapping into goals, putting yourself out there online, or starting your own business behind closed doors, there's always this fear of what other people will think. And you just need to throw that shit out the door. Fuck them. Because at the end of the day, even if you did everything right, according to whoever's standard, they're still going to have an opinion about you no matter what. So you might as well just be comfortable with the decision that you're making. Make it quicker rather than later. And that's something that I still actively work on. Just making a decision and sticking to it. And then you never truly fail that way. I mean, as long as you are trying, if it doesn't work out, pivot. The only time I think you really fail at anything in life is when you accept that you think you deserve that, or you accept that defeat and you let it go. And I think there's also something to be said about trying something to see if you like it. And if you don't, cool. You checked it off the list. Now you know you don't like it and you can move on to something else. That doesn't mean you failed. It just means it wasn't for you. So I guess just saying fuck it would be my advice.
Fuck it. Something that I do with my clients too is, when they visualize goals, they're looking at the end goal, at the top of the pyramid. Say there's a bunch of steps to get to the top of the pyramid. Just take it a day at a time. It can be daunting and overwhelming to be like, oh, well, I'm going to quit drinking for a week or a month or a year. But just take it a day at a time. You're thinking about all these scenarios that could happen, or these situations where oh, well, I get a wedding, or I'm going out with my friends this weekend. Wait until that day and then just make that decision that day. But when you start to worry about something that's in the future, that makes it more daunting. So literally just take it a day at a time. And this is the same thing with your goals too. You have a weight loss goal or you want to put on muscle, just take it a day at a time. What do I need to do today to be perfect or near perfect to get closer to my goal? One day closer. And that's all you got to do. Just take it one day at a time. One day, one decision at a time.
I'm going to expand on that. Even just to kind of help prevent the all or nothing mentality, even just break it down to by the hour. I think a lot of times, especially if you're in a wellness journey, you slip and you have a cheat meal, then you use it as an excuse to throw out all the rest of the meals of the day and just say, oh, I'll start tomorrow. It's okay. You slipped on that meal, but you've got meals at home. I think really breaking it down to the simple stuff to add a new habit goes a long way, because you're not going to go to bed one night hoping to be Olympian the next day. You've got to do the prep work. So sometimes that looks like getting out of bed and just making your bed that day. That could be your win. And you strive to hit that goal for a solid 7 days. And then that turns into 14 days, So give yourself a lot of praise for the simple stuff. And if you're on a sobriety journey, it's not something you have to do alone. And I think finding people that are willing to join in on that journey with you will only enhance your odds. I think more than anything, what kills and breaks my heart is seeing couples where one might have an addiction and the other one doesn't. And the one that doesn't sits there and drinks in front of the one that's struggling with their addiction. If that's the kind of partner you have, then, maybe that's not the person for you. Like, I think true love is sacrificing a little bit of yourself so that the other person can step into that better version, especially when it comes to substance. You got to be careful with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right, my friends.
What do we get next?
I think that's kind of it. I mean, as far as that I can tell, there will be more episodes with different topics that were sent to us in that poll that I did on Instagram. So stay tuned for that.
Let us know down in the comments what other questions you might have after watching this podcast.
Anything you might have taken away that positively influenced you too, or maybe you want to expand on or hear more in a different episode. We'd love to hear it. What's your journey if you have struggled with substance, and who's been your rock along the way? But outside of that, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Be safe, be brave, and always remember to put your universe first, because it's you from the start to the finish. I'll see you later.
I love it. See you guys on the next one.